64! Church on Sunday 64! This is Solex. And this is Church on Sunday 64! Four! There's just a funny little thought that came into my mind. When we used to be these little, the little deviant little teenagers, and there used to be golf courses that we'd drive by, and the guys would be all like, putting their club right there, and they're getting all ready. And you know how golfers are. They're so intense with their concentration, and everything, and getting all ready. And of course, maybe you don't see so much of it in the professional game, but, he's sitting there getting all... He's getting so intense, wanting to hit his ball and getting himself all ready. And we'd always drive by and go, 4! I remember one guy, he got so mad he turned around and threw his golf club. Anyway, but where were we? From the last video, if you was watching these videos in succession, like I told you to, then the last, it's like, which book? And we talked about, the Quran. And there's other religion books that are out there, but again, a lot of those religions that were created, and even the different denominations of Christianity, like the Mormons got their book, the Jehovah's Witnesses got their book, and then there's the NIV, and then there's the King James, and I think you just don't get the basic one out there that isn't labeled by any version. I mean, they want to sit there and they want to take the words and refine them, and and if I was to say, so here, let me get it out. Let me get it out before I continue on. And I think a relationship with God through prayer, meditation, and then believing and understanding in the work of the cross and Jesus and the sacrifice that was made. And where are you going to do that? Where are you going to do that? I mean, tell me. Where are you going to do that? Just reading, and part of my journey that I went through is that, and this was kind of a little bit of a discipline too, to just get my butt out of bed, and then I'd have a Bible. Oh, I don't even want to say this, but I'd have a Bible sitting next to the seat that you sit on in the toilet. I'm sorry. And I knew if I got there, then I was there, and I ain't going to fall asleep there, right? So then I would read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It was just the consistent and persistent aspect of reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it's just a story of Christ and Christ's life and how it was interpreted and the things that were said. Now, with that being said, I think also, and I think maybe one day, I'd like to create my own book, and definitely Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because that to me is the cornerstone right there. That, Psalms, and Proverbs. Psalms, Proverbs, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and make that a book. And, of course, there's other stories. There's other stories in the Bible about people's lives. I do like the stories about certain people's lives and their exercising of faith. And we're going to talk about faith. I mean, faith is, oh my gosh, huge. Faith is so huge. I mean, and that's a good part of the reason why people don't want to believe either, is because it requires people to have faith. And faith is difficult. Faith is very difficult. It's very difficult. So thinking about which book, and I don't think, and I'll tell you, man, I will tell you 100% guaranteed it will happen. And I've talked to some other people too about this, as far as if you did this practice, and this is what I did, and then God revealed himself to me. So in his own unique way, for me, he revealed himself to me, for me, in his own unique way. Sure he did, and it was it was the consistent aspect of reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then, and not reading the whole book, just reading a few chapters each day out of that one, and then getting to the next one and reading that, and then the prayer and meditation and having a relationship with God through prayer and meditation, and doing my best to keep my mouth shut, except I'd be like, in the beginning, I had to go, God, 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 to try to shut everything else off and just have God, 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 and to get my mind in, it took me about 6 weeks-ish or so before I was ever able to sit there and be quiet and be centered in the peace of God in a, and I remember that this one happened time to me, you see. It's like I went, and it was evening. It happened to me, you see, in the evening. And it was in the evening one time that I was meditating, sitting in my chair. You got to sit in a chair when you meditate. Can't lay down and fall asleep. You can't sit at the table, put your head down, because then you fall asleep too. So you got to sit in the chair, make sure it's comfortable, and if you're going to get a little cold, get a blanket or whatever. I don't know. I never needed any of that. But I'll never forget that one time. And I was meditating, and then something brought me, and I opened my eyes, and I looked over, and I had been sitting there for more than an hour. And there was the first thing that came to my mind when I looked over at the clock and saw that I'd been sitting there for such a long time, in total peace, still sitting up straight and everything. Where was I? Where did I just go? So, and everything expanded upon itself from there. I mean, and once I really reached that point, understanding that my spirit was it, what it does, you see, is it drive the wedge between flesh and the spirit, and give you understanding on conscious level of the different entities of you as a being. You got a spiritual being, and you got the flesh being. This one that's got the power. It's got the power. The spirit of you is where the power's at. And I'll tell you, I mean, it's like my heart's exploding right now because of all the benefits of coming to that conscious realization is massive, huge. I mean, it was just like understanding that, and and then things that compounded along the way after that was that, I finally reached that point that it was kind of an escape from the tyranny of life. Because we're so distracted and so attached to emotions and all those kinds of things I've talked about in some of my other videos, is that we're so attached to emotions that we're pulling away all the time. And then we start worrying, we start getting tormented by everything, and upset and uptight and crazy and crying and how, just the whole gamut of the things that affect our lives. That like, this was like, coming into the realization like that is such peace. I mean, it's like, it's just a peace that is brought over you that gives you confidence, knowing that everything gonna be okay, you see. Everything gonna be okay, you see. I mean, and the true meaning of who are you to worry about what you shall eat or what you shall wear, when look at the birds of the fields. So, in essence, in part, it can put you in a situation where you are able to detach and let go of the physical world and what's going on, you see, and then realize where you need to be, and in those moments where you need to be, and understanding, and when you get to that, the power that's there and the peace that it brings. Yep.